Welcome to the deep dive. Ever stop and wonder why you make certain choices, even the ones that maybe feel a bit off?
Yeah, the irrational ones we all make sometimes.
Exactly. So today we're really diving deep into, well, how we think, how we make decisions.
And we're using a fantastic guide, Daniel Kahneman's Thinking, Fast and Slow. A huge book. Kahneman actually won a Nobel Prize in economics for this work.
Wow, Nobel Prize.
Yeah, largely based on research he did years earlier with his collaborator, Amos Tversky. It really revolutionized how we understand judgment.
Okay, so what's our goal here, our mission for this deep dive?
It's pretty straightforward, actually. We want to get a handle on the two main ways our minds work, the two systems driving our thoughts.
Think of it like getting to know the characters inside your own head.
Right, and understanding them. Well, that's the key to making better, smarter choices, hopefully.
So who are these characters, these systems?
Okay, Kahneman calls them System 1 and System 2. Let's imagine them as, I don't know, two agents in your mind. Different personalities, different skills.
All right, Agent 1, System 1. Tell me about this one.
System 1 is the fast one. It's automatic, quick, totally effortless. It's your intuition, your gut feelings. Runs in the background all the time.
Always on.
Pretty much. You don't even notice it most of the time. It's, when you instantly turn your head towards a loud bang?
Yeah, reflex.
That's System 1.
Yeah.
Or seeing someone's angry face and just knowing they're angry, no analysis needed.
Okay. Simple sentences, too, like understanding what I'm saying right now.
Exactly. Driving on an empty, familiar road or answering, what's 2 plus 2?
4, instant.
Instant. That's System 1. Super efficient at creating these impressions, feelings, intuitions that, well, they feed into our slower thinking.
So it's like the first draft of our thoughts, quick and dirty.
That's a good way to put it. Give System 2 something to work with. But.
And this is a big but.
There's always a but.
Well, yeah. Because it's so fast and relies on shortcuts, System 1 makes mistakes. Predictable mistakes. We call them biases.
Biases. It jumps to conclusions. It loves a coherent story, even if it has to ignore some facts to make it fit. And it's easily fooled by emotions, illusions.
So fast, intuitive, efficient, but sometimes wrong and easily tricked. Got it. System 1.
Now for the other agent. System 2.
The slow thinker.
The slow thinker. This is the one that requires effort. It allocates attention, focuses. It's what we usually mean when we talk about thinking.
Okay, so what kind of things does System 2 handle?
Think about parking your car in a really tight spot. You have to focus.
Right, definitely. White knuckles.
Or comparing, say, two washing machines, looking at features, prices. That takes mental energy.
Filling out a tax form.
Ugh, yes. Prime System 2 territory.
Yeah.
Or doing actual calculations like 17 times 24.
Don't ask me to do that now.
Exactly. You'd have to stop, concentrate. That's System 2 kicking in. It's the conscious, reasoning self, logic, analysis, deliberation.
That sounds like the part of us that should be in charge, the rational part.
It is. It's associated with choice and concentration. But here's the catch with System 2.
Another catch.
It's lazy. Fundamentally lazy.
Lazy. A rational mind.
While mental effort is costly, our brains try to conserve energy. So System 2 often just accepts what System 1 offers up. It defaults to the easy answer.
Without checking the work.
Often, yes.
Yeah.
Especially if we're tired or stressed or trying to do something else at the same time. It takes deliberate effort to override System 1.
Okay, so they work together then. System 1 throws out ideas, feelings.
Impressions, intuitions, intentions, yeah.
And System 2 can step in, analyze, and say yes or no, or hang on.
That's the ideal dynamic. System 1 suggests, System 2 decides.
And usually that works okay.
Most of the time it's fine. Our intuitions are often pretty good, honed by experience. And System 2 is there for the really important stuff, hopefully.
But the problem comes when System 2 doesn't step in when it should, when it lets System 1's mistakes slide.
Precisely. And that happens a lot. Why? Well, like we said, laziness. Or maybe System 2 is busy focusing on something else.
Like scrolling social media while trying to make a decision.
Exactly. Or sometimes System 2 just doesn't even recognize that System 1's suggestion is a mistake. It feels right, intuitively.
Which brings us back to those biases. The predictable errors from System 1. Let's look at a few. Anchoring. What's that about?
Anchoring. It's our tendency to rely too heavily on the very first piece of information we get. The anchor.
Even if it's totally random.
Even if it's random. Classic example. Salary negotiations. The first number put on the table, whether high or low, tends to anchor the whole discussion around it.
Or like those limit 12 per customer signs in supermarkets.
Yes. That number 12 becomes an anchor. Even if you only needed 2 cans of soup, suddenly buying, say, 6 seems reasonable because it's less than the limit. It subtly influences your perception of quantity.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. What about the availability heuristic?
Availability.
Right.
This is all about how easily examples come to mind. We tend to overestimate the likelihood of things that are easy to recall.
Stuff that's recent or vivid or emotionally charged.
Exactly. Think about news reports of plane crashes. They're dramatic, scary, memorable. So after seeing one,
Flying feels really dangerous.
right, even though statistically, you're far more likely to have an accident driving to the airport. But car crashes are common, less dramatic, so they don't stick in the mind the same way. They're less available.
Got it. So what's easy to remember isn't always what's most probable.
Not at all. Then there's the representativeness heuristic.
Representativeness, like stereotypes.
Pretty much. We judge how likely something is based on how well it matches our mental prototype or stereotype of it, and we often ignore the underlying statistics, the base rates.
Give me an example.
Okay, the classic one Kahneman used. Imagine you meet someone named Steve. He's described as shy, withdrawn, invariably helpful, but with little interest in people or the world of reality. He has a need for order and structure and a passion for detail. Is Steve more likely to be a librarian or a farmer?
The description screams librarian, right? Fits the stereotype.
Fits the stereotype perfectly. That's representativeness. But think about base rates. How many male farmers are there compared to male librarians in the population?
Oh, way more farms.
Vastly more. So statistically, even with that description, Steve is much more likely to be a farmer. System 1 grabs onto the description, the stereotype, and ignores the probability.
Wow. Okay, that's a good one. And confirmation bias, I feel like I see this one everywhere.
Oh, it's pervasive. It's our tendency to look for evidence that confirms what we already believe.
And ignore or dismiss stuff that challenges our beliefs.
Exactly. We actively seek out confirming information and find ways to discredit contradictory evidence. It makes us feel like we're right, but it can really blind us.
Then there's that I knew it all along feeling after something happens.
Hindsight bias, yes. Once we know the outcome, it seems obvious, inevitable, predictable.
Even if it wasn't at all predictable beforehand.
Right. It makes it hard to accurately evaluate past decisions or learn from unexpected events because in hindsight, nothing seems unexpected.
Okay, one more pair. Overconfidence and the planning fallacy.
These two are definitely partners in crime. Overconfidence is just, well, we tend to think we know more than we do and that our judgments are more accurate than they are.
We overestimate our abilities.
Consistently. And that fuels the planning fallacy, which is our tendency to underestimate how long things will take, how much they'll cost, and what risks are involved.
While overestimating the benefits.
Precisely. Think about any major project, building a house, planning a wedding, even, government infrastructure projects.
It's always late and over budget.
Almost invariably. That's the planning fallacy fed by overconfidence. We focus on the best-case scenario and ignore past experiences or statistical realities.
Okay, so these biases are all kind of rooted in System 1's shortcuts. But Kahneman and Tversky also looked at how we make choices under uncertainty, right? Prospect theory.
Yes, and this was truly revolutionary. It challenged the standard economic idea that we're always rational actors trying to maximize utility or value.
What did they find instead?
Well, several key things. First, reference dependence. We don't evaluate outcomes in absolute terms, but as gains or losses relative to a starting point, a reference point.
Like my expectation.
Exactly. Winning $100 feels great if you expected nothing. But if you expected $200, that same $100 win actually feels like a loss. The reference point changes everything.
Okay. And loss aversion, you mentioned that earlier.
Super important concept. Basically, losses loom larger than gains. The pain of losing, say, $50 is psychologically much more powerful than the pleasure of gaining $50.
Which explains why people hate losing things, even small things.
Absolutely. It explains why investors might hold on to losing stocks way too long, hoping they'll bounce back. The pain of realizing the loss is too great.
Makes sense. And diminishing sensitivity.
Right. The emotional impact of a change lessens as the absolute amount gets bigger. So the difference between having $0 and having $100 feels huge.
Life-changing, maybe.
Well, significant anyway. But the difference between having $1,000 and having $1,100, still nice. But the emotional kick isn't nearly as strong, even though it's the same $100 difference.
So our sensitivity to gains and losses diminishes.
Exactly. Which leads to different risk attitudes depending on whether we're looking at potential gains or potential losses.
And all this means, the way a choice is framed is crucial.
Hugely crucial, because framing can shift our reference point and trigger loss aversion. The classic example is the medical treatment. Telling patients there's a 90% survival rate sounds positive,
Yeah, reassuring.
but framing it as a 10% mortality rate, even though it's the exact same statistic, sounds much scarier.
Because it highlights the loss.
It highlights the loss, and people become much more risk-averse. Framing can totally change the decision people make, even when the underlying facts are identical.
Fascinating. Okay, near the end of the book, Kahneman talks about two different selves, the experiencing self and the remembering self.
Yes, this is a really profound idea, I think. It gets at how we evaluate our own lives and happiness.
So, the experiencing self, that's me, right now, living life moment by moment.
That's the one. It's the self that feels pleasure, pain, boredom, engagement. Whatever's happening in the present, it lives through the actual duration of events.
Okay. And the remembering self.
The remembering self is the storyteller. It's the one that looks back, creates memories, evaluates experiences after they've happened, and crucially, makes decisions about the future.
So it keeps score.
You keep score, yes.
Yeah.
But it doesn't score things the way the experiencing self does. It has its own biases.
Ah, more biases.
Well, a key one is the peak end rule.
Peak in. What does that mean?
It means the remembering self doesn't really care about the duration of an experience. Its overall assessment is dominated by two things: the most intense moment, the peak, whether good or bad, and how the experience finished, the end.
Seriously, the duration doesn't matter much.
Surprisingly little, according to the research. Think about a vacation. You could have 2 weeks of moderately present experiences ending with a missed flight and lost luggage.
Night.
Your remembering self might rate that vacation poorly. Compare that to a shorter, maybe 3-day trip that was intensely fun and ended on a real high note.
The remembering self would probably love that one.
Exactly. Even though the total amount of pleasant experience might have been greater in the longer trip, the peak end rule dictates the memory.
So the self making choices about future vacations.
Is the remembering self, using these potentially skewed memories, which means we might choose experiences that make for a better memory or story, rather than ones that maximize our actual moment-to-moment well-being.
There can be a real conflict between what makes the experiencing self happy and what the remembering self values.
A definite conflict. It raises questions about what we should prioritize when we think about happiness and well-being.
Wow. Okay. We've gone through a lot. System 1, System 2, all those biases, prospect theory, the two selves. What's the main takeaway for someone listening?
I think the core idea is just this awareness. Your mind isn't one single rational entity. It's got these two very different ways of operating. System 1, fast, intuitive, often helpful, but biased. System 2, slow, logical, capable of reason, but lazy and easily distracted.
And we can't just switch off System 1, right? We can't eliminate the biases entirely.
No, probably not. They're deeply ingrained. But knowing they exist, that's the crucial first step. Awareness allows you to recognize the patterns.
So you can maybe pause and think, hang on, is this System 1 jumping to a conclusion here?
Exactly. It's about knowing when to distrust your gut and engage that slower, more effortful System 2.
So practically speaking, what can you, the listener, do?
Well, first, just slow down for important decisions. Give System 2 a chance to actually engage.
Don't just react.
Right. Second, actively fight confirmation bias. Seek out different perspectives, information that challenges your assumptions. Ask yourself, how could I be wrong here?
Good advice.
Third, remember base rates. Don't just rely on stereotypes or vivid stories. Think about the actual statistics, the probabilities. Is this really likely, or does it just feel representative?
Pay attention to framing too, I guess.
Definitely. Notice how choices are presented to you, and try reframing them yourself. Would you feel differently if it was described as a gain versus a loss?
And that remembering self.
Yeah, maybe reflect a bit on what truly makes your experiencing self feel good day to day, not just what will sound impressive later. What brings genuine well-being versus what just makes a good story.
It's a lot to think about, but really valuable. Thinking fast and slow basically gives you a user's manual for your own mind.
It really does. An incredibly powerful toolkit for understanding why we do what we do and hopefully making slightly better choices along the way.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening.
Yeah, perhaps think about a decision you made recently. Doesn't have to be huge. Can you spot System 1 or System 2 at work, where any of those biases may be nudging you one way or another?
Or think about a memory of an event. How much is that memory shaped by the peak moment or the way it ended versus the whole experience?
Just something to chew on. It's
Yeah.
fascinating once
Yeah.
you start looking for it.